I'm Ruchira Banka, an MYP educator for more than a decade. I am the principal at the School of Raya for the Middle Years program and the director at Art Journal Foundation. On behalf of Art Journal Foundation, I appreciate your presence to this discussion. I am sure it is for the good of all our learners. The MIBE portfolio is a tool that gauges a student's understanding and development of skills in the said discipline, and a PCUP provides a theme and direction to this journey. While the key concept, the related concept, and the global context do give a clear and deep understanding of the statement of inquiry, and they set up an expectation of the artwork or the performance that the students must create. Uh, it is our responsibility as their facilitators to help them unpack this statement of inquiry and discuss this understanding with our learners. The statement of inquiry for this year's partially completed unit planner is Art Imagines Possible Futures. While each one of us have made our own understanding and interpretation of this statement, at Art Journal Foundation, we thought of bringing in our experienced facilitators who are workshop leaders or IB examiners to lead the discussion for the day. We have on the panel here Mr. Vaishak Emraj, Ms. Ananya Tripathi, Ms. Ila Bharti, and Mr. Neerav Patel. While our experts today will lead these discussions, I request all the participants to share their point of views and ideas or any discussion points in the chat box. Kindly keep the mics on mute to ensure the decorum during this forum. Please note that we shall focus on discussions around unpacking the PCUP only today and not dive into the e-portfolio requirements for now. So without much ado, I shall begin, and I throw my first question to Mr. Vaishak. We'll begin by unpacking the SOI. So what is your understanding of Art Imagines Possible Futures?
Okay. I was I didn't expect to go first. Okay. So see, when we talk about possible futures, like I'm imagining different interpretations of the future. Like, am I talking about dystopian futures? Am I talking about utopian futures? Or am I talking about, you know, a future where, even the past is interconnected with the future. So there are different interpretations of the future. One very interesting resource that, I found in this year's PCUP is that, the 50 film, not 50 film, the films that were talking about the future. And I feel this is your statement of inquiry that, the students, the children of this generation, they can very much connect to, because a lot of their novels that they read, the movies that they watch, the web series that they watch is all somehow talking about an imaginative future. Whether it exists or not exists, that doesn't get into account. But I think the whole idea of using art to imagine a future is so important. Like, when we talk about different artists also, like, forget artists, even take epics like, like a Ramayana, which actually imagined something like a flying chariot. It's also imaginative in nature. Uh, like talking about, that the hills which have cure for or cure name, like for, medicines for immortality and things like that. So there are timeless examples where, artists, epics, stories have imagined possible futures. So I feel this is also a very great way for children to connect to the, past artworks, epics, and classics that have talked about the future, and in a way understand also what is the power of art. Like, it's just not about portraying something, it's also by pushing those boundaries of the human mind to imagine something that is still not there. Like, can they imagine a future where we all live in Mars? Absolutely, yes. Like, can they imagine um, another world war where, technology is fighting with mankind? That's also possible. So there are many interpretations, that the SOI actually poses to a student who is going to create something. So I think that's one great area for, like, after a very long time, I'm feeling very, invested into an SOI. So it has a lot of possibilities. However, I do think that a lot of them get, pushed down just by the the wording of the global context, which is a scientific and technical innovation. But innovation does not mean there is a integration with technology or science. It does not necessarily mean that. Innovation also talks about how we can innovate the genre that we are working on to imagine so many possible futures. With that, I'll close.
Okay, sounds good. I think for me also it seems like it's so vast that you can go into think of, because you've gotten the full power of innovation. There is no end to innovation, and that's what we are looking at, creating innovators for tomorrow. So Ananya, when you talk about theater, what theater movements do you think you can look into the future, that have looked into the future especially?
Hi everybody. Yeah, I first of all would like to agree with Vaishak that in general, I always am fascinated by the kind of statement of inquiries that come in the PCUP, but primarily this time, the fact that I cannot, and because we all also get to see the samples of portfolios, I think this time students will be pushed in a very sort of productive way to think of a text and to imagine a future with it. Otherwise, often what happens in a discipline like theater, that sometimes very sort of primitive texts, primitive artists are also being taken up without imagining things around them. And I think this inquiry will push us to maybe even take a text which has existed for 1,000 years, but to see what can happen with that, at least when it comes to the outcome part of it. So I was thinking about it, and I think what Vaishak has touched upon is something that all of us should be mindful about while unpacking the inquiry, that it does not only talk about a negative future or a positive future. I think it just asks us to imagine a possible future. And I think that opens up a lot of possibilities in my mind. Even a practitioner like Augusto Boal imagined a possible future, and whereas he imagined a positive possible future. So they would come up with technique, they would come up with situations which could possibly happen to you, to me, to us as a community, and then they would talk about how to deal with them when they do happen. So I think forum specially looks at imagining a possible future. A lot of post dramatic forms which go away from linear narrative, linear storytelling. They use a lot of elements of installation of technology already, are also something that are worth exploring. So things which come into post dramatic theater, absurdism could also look at that. That's a form which is often imagined a future in very dark humor kind of a style. I was also reading up, there are a lot of plays in very recent times, and by recent I mean like 20, 30 years, which have delved into the sci-fi aspect of theater, of storytelling actually. And a lot of plays have been reimagined or written from scratch on that, within that sort of, there has been movement within which there are a lot of plays available, narratives available. And on the same lines, I was also thinking of so many artists who have done work with texts like, or plays, or performances like Alice in Wonderland, and completely reimagined them, grounded them in technology, looking sort of into the future. So I think these are some of the first few things that come to mind. I was also thinking of devising as a movement, but I don't think content wise it has imagined a possible future. Technique wise, it was very futuristic, I would say. So I think that's also a distinction that as facilitators we can make, that form and content, in both something that imagines a possible future, the research should be rooted in that, the research should be grounded in that, where both form and content find this alignment of imagining a possible future, because we do have certain um, movements, styles of performance which have been very sort of, have imagined a kind of way of moving, way of expressing, which was not present at that, in that context. But I think we'll have to be mindful of that when we are researching, that the presentation and the content, the narrative, both have aligned to sort of imagine a possible future. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Ananya, for sharing these examples, which actually lead to the objective A for investigation. I think we could move to our visual artist, Miss Ila and Mr. Neerav, who could talk some, how would you lead investigation in your classrooms in light of this statement of inquiry?
Thank you, Ruchira, for giving me this opportunity to share my opinion. And since this is a very creative subject as a visual artist, and I would completely resonate with the statement of inquiry. And I find that this is very interesting and also very um, already we are practicing this since long, because definitely art imagines possible future. And nowadays we can see a lot of artists, they are taking this imagination and innovation to the next level. And as per my opinion, there can be something which can be included while unpacking the statement of inquiry or key concept and all. The first thing I would like to mention here, that how technology has affected artistic medium. Like nowadays, we can see that students and teachers and artists, a lot of people are involving and learning digital medium. So that can be also very innovation, I can say. And then installation art, through installation art, they can show a lot of creative ideas which can also showcase their innovation and also creative aspect. Then AI generated art, I can say that they can also think about that AI generated art, how they can take it forward and include in their portfolio. Then next thing can be now a lot of artists are doing eco-aware artistic techniques, like they include very basic material, eco-friendly material to create some artwork, which is also innovative, and side by side it is very eco-friendly. So these are the artwork, and also it is sustainability can be also seen in that perspective. So students can take care of these point, and they can select artists based on that. Then one thing also I can mention here, that significance of social themes that has grown in specifically in modern time. I can say that a lot of contemporary artists that include social media to convey their message. And also they convey a lot of social awareness through their art. So these are the aspect they can think of to create, to imagine something which can showcase their creative aspect. So based on that, I can see that a lot of artists, they can refer to who have already done in previous years, like golden era. They can select some artists like Leonardo da Vinci or George Sora. And many artists are doing currently, contemporary artists are also there. They can refer to those artists, and inspired by that their work, they can create something on their own. They can research, they can find out something on, and then they can include in their process.
Excellent explanation, Ila ma'am. You have covered everything. Nothing is left for me, what I believe. But I want to add here what resources I want to add in your artist like points. What resources we have received from IB, that it's really helpful to understand, and what covered by Mr. Vaishak, like that 50 movies where it's talk about future. So this all comes first in art thought process, and then it's become a product. And this base is something like there is creativity. So when we talk about performing arts or visual art, somehow it's interconnected. Like simply one sentence, like technological advancement, like today how art imagines future, something we have to think like what we can, it's not exist but we can imagine that, and that is a possible. So what, there are 50 movies, this is all about like it's not possible those days when it's directed, but it's still there, then all technology possible, it's happened like present in current scenario.
Great, thanks for sharing that, Neerav. Vaishak, I recollect that you mentioned that science and technology, scientific and technical innovation, rather should not be perceived in a way that we look at only creating something related to science or technology, because I think that's a very misinterpreted global context. Sometimes the
Yeah.
science teachers would talk about that this is a global context only relevant to the sciences. And I'm sure there are multiple art teachers, or at least the students, who think of it, how do we bring in such kind of understanding into the product or performance that we are creating? So if you could throw
Yeah.
some light on the contextual lens through this inquiry.
Yeah, before even I throw the contextual lens also, I want to sort of reassure the educators also. Like when IB releases a PCUP, it keeps in mind that, this PCUP is transferable and applicable to, students and educators across such things. What I mean is, there might be schools where they might not be having so much facilities to avail technological resource. Like there are schools that may not have, even a technology or a reporting tool like ManageBack for that matter. So we are talking about a PCUP that can be applied in various contexts and culture settings. So do not, assume under the pressure that, I have a lot of technological resources and I'm not using it because, somehow it's difficult for me to get into the idea of uh, a scientific and technical innovation. And second thing, I think this global context also has come after a very long time in a PCUP. So because it's generally a global context that our teachers do not explore. So suddenly when it came, so that also it's an unknown territory. So that fear also comes into play. So but I'm sort of reassuring you, you do not have to get into the uh, get coaxed by the wordings of scientific and technical innovation. So there is the if you see the MYP principles into practice, there is a meaning for scientific and technical innovation. There's a category description, and after the category description, there is something known as, yeah. So this is a category description. Thank you so much, main line. So it's like, so this is a category description. You don't have to go into deep into this also, by the way. It's just telling you what is the lens of scientific and technical innovation. It's the natural world and its laws, the interaction between people and the natural world, how humans use their understanding of scientific principles, the impact of scientific and technological advances on communities and environments, the impact of environments on human activity, how humans adapt environments to their different needs. Now, the focus question is, how do we understand the world we live in? Now, if you go to the global context, exploration, which you should, that's where our role comes in. You can see multiple explorations. You can see exploration like system models, processes, like opportunities, risks, consequences, and responsibility. You can see adaptation, ingenuity, and progress. You can see the biological revolution. These are some things that is, on top of my mind, but there are around seven, eight, nine explorations, if I'm not wrong. Is it? Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's there. It's very much there. Okay. So I think if you ask me what is the like as like a best practice, I would first say that the student and the teacher together should sit and select what is the global context exploration, because the exploration that you choose is sort of shaping your pathway, is shaping your unit. So with the same unit, same conceptual lens, if there are two students who select two global context explorations, their journey can be very different, may not be even closely related to each other. I mean, the conceptual framework will still connect them, the innovation part will still connect them, but it travels in a very different way. For example, someone takes opportunities, consequences, and risk, opportunities, consequences, and responsibility, and is talking something about a technological war that is upcoming. So that travels like that. On the other hand, someone is talking about uh, um, adaptation, ingenuity, and progress, and is talking about, say, a post-apocalyptic war and how humans adapt in a new environment. Or someone is talking about going to Mars, or life in another planet. So as the lens, I always say, like, whichever workshop I take, I tell I tell it's like wearing your specs. One is your conceptual lens and one is your contextual lens. So the way you change your contextual lens also changes the way you see the unit. So do not get boggled down by the idea of scientific and technical innovation. So that's one label. At times, when we discuss within the IB framework, also we tell a lot many times this word only, sort of it creates an unknown fear in the mind of so many people that they don't even attempt it. Actually, they feel that it's a global context that the science teachers or the maths teachers can attempt to. So it's not like that. Okay. Yeah, with that I'll stop.
Yeah, others who would want to contribute to this through their disciplines, maybe.
I'll add to that I agree that it's slightly daunting territory because again, especially speaking for theater practitioners also, all sometimes in the limited infrastructure that we work with, if within school, outside school, we often work with technology and science part of performance. We often rely on lights and sound, and that becomes our world of exploration of science and technology. So I do feel that even that when I initially read it, felt slightly daunting. That oh, how does one go about exploring this or talking about a research form? That, but as Vaishak is correctly saying, over the past few years, just choosing an exploration has really helped me and my students pick up a very specific form, artist, theater company style, and that then really filters down to also our performance, the criteria see that we look at. So I think if you generally do that, that is helpful. Having said that, I do feel that um, purpose of art is always sort of rooted in the context we live in, the need of the times. And so whether you look at Brecht, whether you look at Boal, whether you look at realism, all of them were so sort of, whether you look at theater of the absurd and theater of cruelty, all of them were so sort of rooted in what was happening around them. And I feel we are occupied, actually the other way around, technology occupies our world, we don't occupy that world anymore. We are surrounded by technology, and technology lives with us. I don't think we live with technology anymore. So having said that, I do feel that it's a great opportunity to actually delve into the science part of this discipline, to actually delve into the technical part of this discipline, because well, it students are living in it. That is their world. They're being guided by it, they're surrounded by it. So I do feel that this is a good chance to also delve into what can how can a narrative change if Ananya is speaking this on stage and has also recorded herself, and there's a version of it on projection, which is a simple thing to do. Projection is something that we can all manage. So I do feel that um, um, interventions like that, imaginations like that should be made possible within this unit, because otherwise we, in our safe spaces, we do stay away from it. We do stay away from things which we know are slightly, let's say, not very closer home to us. So I do feel that this is a great opportunity to look at text, to look at forms, to look at visuals which are embedded in science and technology. And again, that does not only mean having like a phone or a laptop. Technology, scientific technological things could mean so many various things. So yeah, just a few thoughts on that.
Okay, great. Let's also throw some light on the key concept, change. What does it mean in each of the disciplines? How would you want to approach it? Again, of course, through the contextual lens that we've already seen, that we are looking at scientific and technical innovation into much broader perspective rather than looking only at science and technology. And we've seen through what the description of the global context also means from the IB's end. So, Nirav, if you would want to throw some light on how would you approach change in your classrooms?
Sure. Yes, I'm sharing my interpretation, what I understand. Like uh, the future through arts in a visual art context, like, it's a big umbrella. What is my practice generally? What I do, like, first try to figure out what is a student area, interest of area, like, and then bring some light on that, like, where students can, take this inquiry in a different perspective, example, social issue, social media, environment, or main art. So where students can, develop some art that is going to make change. There is a one question here. People are asking me like on WhatsApp message. I got many messages from teachers like this is we have to invent something like design. This is not about design any gadget or device. This is something we have to imagine like how it's going to help in a society, or it's going to make bring change in the society through art. You can please correct me if I'm wrong anywhere, Miss Ila Bharti.
I completely agree with you what you're saying. So definitely we have to accept and we have to adapt the changes that whether it is through medium, technology, or ideation, anything, because change is constant, especially in our subject. We keep looking for new things, innovation, and definitely innovation and change is somewhere integrated very much. And when we are looking for innovation, definitely we are looking for something change, which we have not done before. So we have to encourage our students to go for something innovative or change, and that we have to accept that yes, if they are coming up with some good ideas or some innovative ideas, we have to encourage them to may take it forward to the next level. So I completely agree with you, Mr. Nirav.
Okay,
Thank
Vaishak,
you.
what is your idea of, how this conceptual teaching can be reflected in the portfolios with respect to both change and innovation?
See, again, change, like, thank you for mentioning that. Like, you should see both the conceptual lens together, actually. Like, change, when we are talking about change, we are talking about change and innovation. So, like, I'm just reading the second line of from the principles into practice. So change means an inquiry into the concept of change involves understanding and evaluating causes, processes, and consequences. While if you see innovation, it ensures originality and creativity by new ways of presenting ideas and unusual use of media, the invention of new functions and the ways of working. So when you are selecting artists also, uh, I mean, the global context lens is important, but also keep the idea of innovation very much in alive. Because think about artists who have innovated, who have gone, you know, who have pushed, like, the barriers, or, who has worked within a framework of a discipline. Like if I talk about dance, theater, music, like, one of the resources, it is about 50 uh, 50 songs about the future in the PCPU. Please go through, it's amazing. And there's another article where it's talking about artists, musicians who have innovated their craft. So it's talking about how you bring in innovation in a craft to sort of adapt to change. So when you're looking at a form, like if you're looking at physical theater, or you're looking at, blues, or you're looking at surrealism or realism, see through the lens of change. Has this genre been able to bring about change? Now, change does not mean, like, are there artists who have innovated their practices, doing surrealism or cubism, and have brought about change? Have there artists, who have uh, innovated either with the technique, or with their ideas, or with the craft that they use? Because there are artists who have gone beyond their disciplines, have collaborated with interdisciplinary artists, brought about a change in their craft. Ideally, the form, the movement, or the genre that they do is same, but because the way, the innovative approach that they had in their practice had brought about different outcomes. So see through that, because at the end, like, Ruchira, I also believe that, in the class, what we are grounding the PCP in a context. But at the end of the day, what you are teaching in the class is a concept. So even, across your all the portfolio requirements, the conceptual understanding should be very evident. Like, how are you seeing it through the lens of innovation and change is so important. Yeah.
So I think combining, as per my understanding of what Nirav said and what you said, is that it's important that I'm able to see that change, evaluate those causes in areas of interest to me as a student. Say,
Hmm.
if I am interested in just social media, I can talk about the changes that come across through that theme by itself and then create my performance or artwork.
I would just like to give two examples actually before it goes away from my mind.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the I'm like, we all know the Shakespearean play The Tempest. So there is this artist called Crystal Pine. So she actually had made something called as the Tempest replica. So if you go on, YouTube and search about the Tempest replica, you can see how future it is. It is. It's
Mhm.
talking about the Tempest only. The storyline is the Tempest, but because of the innovative practice that it has, it's so futuristic in nature. Like it is a complete revolt against anything that Shakespearean theater can look to us. At the same time, like Jungle Book. So I think a few years back, 2 or 3 years back only. So the Akram Khan Dance Company. So they took about the Jungle Book and made something called the Jungle Book Reimagined, where they brought in the idea of, climate change and pollution and things also through the lens of Jungle Book. So that was an innovative practice. So which also talks about the idea of change. Although, the current PCP does not demand to select an artwork which is also, aligned with the SOI. It doesn't ask. But we have to keep this in mind when we select the artwork also. We are addressing to the conceptual lens of innovation and, change.
Right. I think you bringing in some aspect of aligning to the IB mission by itself, the example that you gave, if I am bringing in some sort of why would I make a change? Why would I innovate something to be able to solve a problem, which which directly aligns to the mission, which talks about creating those lifelong learners who are able to take care of this only planet, right? So think on those lines might make more sense. This is the time of discussions and creating ideas, and as much as you can relate to closely to what a child thinks and how they can bring in about that change through their artwork or performance would make sense. Any examples, Ananya, that you can pick up of theater exercises which the students can do in order to root their theme in scientific and technical innovation?
Right. So I was also thinking about firstly the fact that how to talk about sort of change and innovation in classroom. But again, I think uh, if you look at sort of invention of so many of these movements, styles, they're so rooted in the desire, the need to bring about change from the fact that people people have gone differently about performing from within a space to another space. So from very small things to bigger things, artists have found ways to sort of bring about change in the way they present things. So innovate and sort of find new ways of conveying the same story method, the same narrative. Just before I move on to the exercises, I was thinking Katie Mitchell, who's a famous director, comes to mind. Picks up very um, um, picks up plays from 1900s, 1800s, and looks at them very differently. So I think that might be helpful as an artist to explore. There is a company called Rimini Protocol, if people might have heard about. Again, performance wise, they do such mind blowing things with how they sort of imagine performance itself. So, what you define as performance itself changes when you look at their work, and I think might be interesting to explore that and the idea of change and innovation with students. In terms of exercises, I was thinking that I think gradually, and I was also wondering that how childhood, how that time of our life is so connected with future. Like all of course it's they're surrounded by other things as well, but it's a lot of our imagination is about the future, is about what am I going to be when I grow up, where am I going to live, what my life is going to look like. So I've also find that maybe just that as a starting point dramatically could be a nice thing, could be an interesting sort of entry point into this conversation of of that possible future. So maybe improvisations around that, where you give them a prompt of a current situation, but it must end in a certain way, where we give them an end line and they sort of come up with a scene, but they end with that line. So improvisations of different kinds. I think improvisations in which maybe space is defined, and then they put the story, the content part of it. And I feel that at the same time, improvisations or scene building or this kind of work where they move slightly away from realism, I feel. Again, very specific to theater, but I feel that in in this version where I'm talking about change and innovation, how does my body perform is also going to be slightly sort of key importance. So, the same glass of water that I could drink very realistically, if I just change the way I move my hands and I sort of use it to tell you something else, I think it could be a small change, but could be a very could be something useful to sort of think about. Something I was thinking about also was that maybe some kind of control. So you give them a scene, maybe it's a text that's already there, contemporary text, old text, but you put some controls. So for example, things like the sounds can only come from phone. Yeah, so like I just heard that somebody in some entry, some when people are entering on Zoom, it's making a sound. So let's say the conversation only happens through digital devices and their sounds. I am not allowed to speak a dialogue. So if I have to say no, I disagree with you, what kind of sound my device will make in order to convey that? So just giving them some controls where again the use of conventional elements of theater take a back seat. They could be present, but the control could be to bring to the forefront more such controls where they must think about how innovation can sort of come into a very traditional conventional scene. So just thinking about those kind of exercises, and if more come up, I'll keep writing on the chat.
Yeah, I think great content to your criterion B, where you talk of development of ideas. I really like the idea of that start from within. How do I mean, where do I see myself in the future? What do I want to grow up and become? Those could be very good starters. Beautifully said, Ananya. Let's now maybe talk about the possible outcomes of the unit. How are you looking at in each of your disciplines the possible outcomes of this unit? Anyone who would want to start? Ila, if you want to go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, I can plan in two ways. I mean, I can segregate two kind of concept. One can be conceptual change and innovation, and one artist I can refer to, that is Kusama, sorry. So she is doing changes through her ideas. And there are a lot of artists who bring changes through their conceptual ideas rather than choosing some materialistic thing. And whereas a set of artists, they are showing changes or innovation through their materials. Like Vivan Sundaram is a very good example of that change or innovation. And also, in a positive way, he is taking a lot of garbage, what we can say, and then creating something very innovative. So for visual art perspective, I can say both the ways students should get the opportunity. One aspect is that thinking change through conceptual ideas and all, and then second ideas could be material wise, medium, technique and all, and then they can figure it out how to proceed and what they feel more connected, or they would like to explore more about it. So that is my understanding.
Great. Neera, would you want to add some more examples to it, maybe?
He covered with the example very well. Excellent. I don't have to say anything.
Okay, great. And Ananya and Vaishak, from your disciplines, maybe what are the outcomes that you're expecting?
I'll Oh, Vaishak, please go first.
No, I
Okay.
was unmuting just to tell you, please go ahead.
Okay, okay. So while everybody was talking, I was also thinking about it that I think for me a lot of the drama lies in the mundane, and to imagine a very extreme future is something that of course all of us can do and should do and will do. But I think for me a good possible outcome will be to look at how the daily life changes, what a possible future of a person would be in their daily life, and change and innovation there rather than talking about. And again, no sort of no, I mean, no bias over there. One can talk about, okay, a very dystopian world of, and after a war or something like that. But I do feel that rather than looking that black and white, I would like to explore the gray with students and how can one do that. So while I'm ordering food, what would my life be like? Or while I'm sort of teaching, taking my kids to a park, what would that be like? And I think imagining the dramatic, the criteria, see the performance of the creation aspect is much more exciting to me if I explore that realm with them. Along with, of course, let's say if somebody does say that no, I do want to explore this extremity. There's a good text by, I'm forgetting the name of the playwright, I'll just tell you, called I Want a Country, in which there's a group of people who talk about what kind of country they want. It's an exciting text to explore, by the way. So if anybody wants that, and they look at simple things. They say we don't want old people, we don't want this in the country, we don't, and they have their own reasons about for it. It's a good dramatic text. But I think for me, I would like to experiment both with, as I said, form and content. So the presentation style and the narrative that is there. I would like to see change and innovation in both of them. And I would like to encourage students to find something which A is relevant to them. That's always how I work. I don't like to pick up texts or stories or artists or things which they don't find connections with, which are slightly, again, no bias there, but personally, theater of cruelty, I've never done with students because I don't connect with it. Students find it a little like too much, and so we have not delved into that ever. But again, that's a personal practice. So, firstly, to pick up something in the outcome which really makes sense to their world and how their um, um, their skill and their imagination of future both come together. So something that does improve their skill, so tomorrow as artists, if they do step out in the world, they also know some means how to put up a piece which can incorporate technology, which can incorporate very contemporary elements. So sort of imparting that skill will be an essential part of the outcome, and simultaneously narrative or the story which grounds their reality, and sort of makes sense in their reality. That.
Okay, I think since you are talking about it, there is Akshat who wants to check on that for the theater of the oppressed, how to address the idea of spectator in the performance for Criterion C. It might be slightly risky and take away control from the performer.
Correct. But Akshat, that's always the case. I mean, that's the risk that we put. That's the vulnerability of that form, actually, that one can't do away with. But you know what? I've often done it. We've done it with our school staff. We have done it with the community outside, and students have led it. Students have done everything. I've been on the back seat, completely a fly on the wall. And people do manage, people do figure out. Um, Actors, audiences, and one doesn't have to go into a lot of depth. One can just try out two, three possibilities. One doesn't have to go to like to the end of the solution, which is how forum works. You reach a very possible, very realistic end. But at this stage where students are exploring it, one could just show that they have led that process of imagination of a possible future. It does not really need to grill them and the audience members into thinking of a very perfect end, because that takes also sometimes hours and time that students and other people don't afford. So I think one can prepare a piece, one can take it to the community for which it is meant for. Could be school students, could be a section, could be a grade if you're looking at bullying and things like that, or something else, and explore just couple of ideas which moves forward towards a resolution, maybe doesn't resolve the a problem fully. That's okay. I mean, that's a part of the process anyway. All of us, even professional actors, do experiment with that. So that's a journey that they can take.
Sure. Thank you. Vaishak.
Yeah, I just saw the question actually for asking for music actually. So when we have a discussion on this, um, imagining possible futuristic, can you bring innovative practices in music composition using natural sounds? Can you bring innovative practices? When we were throwing this question to students, an interesting idea came up. They even told that, can there be a future where, we are composing the music and the AI is singing? Can be, and we all go for concerts, AI concerts, where, there's collaboration between human and the AI. Or can it be another way that, the AI becomes the lyricist and the composer and, we are singing? So different, I'm just giving you lines of thought to just think about. I'm not telling you any concrete idea as such. Of course, your children are 10 times much better than us. They live in this today's world, as Anya told earlier, so they'll be able to ideate more. But I think just facilitating to that line of thought, we should give them, sort of quick inquiry, exercises, just so they can ideate more. So one was that, someone wanted to talk about, degradation of natural resources and what can be a planet where there's nothing left. So, or, a new planet, what will music look like then? Because a new planet does mean that, the gravitational forces changes, the sound velocities changes. What will be music in that? So just giving you a few, things to talk about. So I think that also addresses the question that you were asking, what can be the possible outcomes? So I was even thinking for, stage performances and things like that. If I innovate, do I need a stage only? So when I'm looking at stage performance, I'm looking at genres that are having a very solid classical, like a classical framework. And then there are genres that have pushed beyond the framework and they're very flexible and experimentative in nature. The genre itself is like that. But I have children who are practicing extreme rigid classical genres, which has complete framework. Now, how do you innovate in that? We innovate with the other technical possibility. Of course, we are not maybe going to innovate so much with the grammar of that, but we can definitely innovate with the presentation part of that. Does it really have to be a proscenium stage always? Why can't it be an open, why can't it be a site-specific performance? So things like that, thinking how, even bringing in, set craft and props into classical frameworks, which no one told it should not be there. Over in time, it has evolved. So what innovative practice am I bringing in there to bring about that change? So things like that. So sky is the limit with this statement of inquiry. So I have a lot to think and share. So I'm sort of controlling my words here, but I hope that idea is very clear that, you will have different lines of thought to think about to take these products forward.
I think I would want to add one example which came out of a discussion with few students in the past few days, is where art has always taken a backseat in terms of subjects in the classrooms. I'm sure all of you agree to that, that IB is bringing in that pull and bringing these art forms as subjects in the classrooms. However, it is still not at the level that we are expecting to. So students have been thinking and talking around lines where they bring in these art subjects over the others through this statement of inquiry. Know, thinking of ways where art can lead. For example, when you spoke about the performance may not be always on stage, how do I bring art as a medium of instruction by itself to be able to address multiple other disciplines? And when I talk of interdisciplinary education, we see most of the times, I think it's a very generic practice because we all come from a background where math and science and languages have been given that kind of importance, that we bring in our interdisciplinary connections through these subjects. So why not art bind and hold all of these subjects as the medium? These are few discussions that can be brought upon and built upon actually. Um, If there's nothing else, I'll be happy to take a few questions from anyone or any ideas that you would want to share. Since we have the last 10 minutes, anyone who wants to share any good ideas that you've been working on?
There was also a question in the chat. I just quickly addressed that, and then I mean, one can
Sure,
take up other
sure.
questions as well. So, Molly was asking how, for theatre of the absurd, can we incorporate elements like circular plots, visual absurdity, repetitions, and I feel just thematically speaking, theatre of the absurd did come up because the current we made certain structures, we made certain systems. There was God and concept of God, and that stopped making sense. There was World War II, and people were put in concentration camps, and suddenly you felt like, but how can that happen? There's God, there's sense, there's meaning, and meaning broke down, and that is how theater of the absurd came across, because suddenly it turned out there is no meaning, or well, if you look at the other way, that you make the meaning yourself. And I feel that that itself was rooted in trying to find change in the way we live, in the way we treat others, in the way we understand structures like religion, education, relationships, and society, and things like that. So I feel that conceptually, a lot can be picked up from there in order to imagine a possible future. So concepts like repetitions of in somebody's daily life, concepts like absurdity in terms of human condition, what that means. So like I Blinkit has sorry, people who are not in Indian, from Indian context, a delivery app now is you can get an iPhone in like 7 minutes. That's slightly bizarre, if not too bizarre. And things like that are happening around us. So one can look at the absurdity of the current systems that we are again caught in. People who deliver these things, although all of this fanciness, this products, these are available, but the people who deliver this, the kind of money they make is something one has to think about. So one can again look at the systems we are a part of and try to imagine a possible future on those lines, where meaning is lost, like the way technology also works around us, very very, some of the moments, like, you find so absurd. You find yourself you in moments which are so absurd. So maybe taking out those thematic links and using them to come up with a performance. Again, the content, more than the content, the form could have repetition. So for example, an actor goes on stage, tries to brush the teeth, and whatever, there's maybe not even brush anymore, it's just you stand in front of the mirror and the teeth gets cleaned, or whatever, something like that happens, and you do that repetitively. So just even in terms of gestures and actions, one can look at repetition in order to place it in a futuristic context. So those sort of themes and the techniques that theatre of absurd uses can be applied to a performance making, which could look at imagining a possible future. I hope I was able to frame something.
Any other participants would want to share their ideas or their interpretations of the SOI? What are the kind of discussions that are going on in classrooms right now? You can unmute and speak as well. Okay, I really don't see any questions coming in, and we are also close to time. Anyone of the experts would want to add any thoughts before maybe we close?
Somebody in the chat had referred to the AI part, so if one of us can address, Veshak,
Yeah,
please go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. I was going to address that actually.
Oh, did I
So
miss that?
see,
Yeah.
using of AI is how you see it. You're like we are not talking about the written task part like that. It's an altogether different ball game. That is e-portfolio requirements and things like that. That maybe we'll discuss on a later day. But if you're asking about in the process of creating, whether you can use AI as a tool because I believe in music now you have a lot of music mixers which uses AI also. I think you can go for it because that's also an exploration that, we are talking about a future where all this is being used. So I think it is pretty much part of the exploration of ideas actually. So using AI also, and because that can also help in your task force when you actually evaluate your practices, that you know how things change while you used AI, and what were the consequences if your global context is consequences, opportunities, and risk. So you can see it from that lens also. So there is no harm in using it, but do not take away the creative part of the artist from there. That's so important. So it's again, see how you use that as a tool.
Yeah.
Right.
Hi.
Yeah,
So
Seema.
when we are saying about AI and we are turning our e-portfolios and it is coming the similarities and differences and using percentage of AI, then how you are going to tackle and justify to the IB?
So Seema, my beginning statement was that only, like, we are not talking about using tasks, this one in the written tasks. I think the music teacher particularly was referring to how the AI is
Yes.
being used in the creative process.
Okay, and then what about how you guys taking for the inquiry question? Are student going to create their own question and
Yes,
they
they can.
pick up
They are
from
very well. They
pick up
have the
from
freedom. The teacher and the
the
student can create the inquiry
their
questions.
own also, or they can which is preferable, the IB given one or
No,
student?
so it's not IB given one and the teacher given one. IB gives you a line of thought that these,
Right.
if you read the PCP properly, in the beginning it's written these are some of the possible inquiry questions. However, the
Right.
student and teacher is also encouraged to create their own inquiry question.
Okay, so earlier when I earlier facilitator suggest me,
Hmm.
I suggest the IB given that is will be easy for you. So
There is
that
no
is
hard
not,
and fast rule.
it's not like that, right?
No,
They
no.
can create their own.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know how you approach the debatable questions.
But I love that question.
Quite debatable.
That is quite debatable. I do not know if I'll make complete justice to it in 3 minutes of time that we have, Nishchit. Maybe you can connect with me offline if, like, just to throw about it, because if I start talking about it, it'll take good 5-6 minutes. How to approach, like, I would like to know, since Ananya is here, how do you approach the debatable question? It's one of my favorite things in my class.
I I think it's for us it essentially happens. So we sometimes do add it in research, but only when, so we do add it in task one, but only when the entire unit is over. Because only then a lot of times the student is able to take a call on debatable question and give a perspective that is genuinely theirs. Otherwise, I feel at stage of task one and only research is a half-baked understanding. So it's only when sort of I have taken that process myself, in some ways I'm able to, as a student, sort of answer that. I do encourage them to firstly think of both the sides. That what is it saying? Is it talking about, is it something that is favoring one side of the opinion more than the other, and what you think? And I think just my starting point is that based on the artists that you have read, based on the uh, uh, genres, the movements that you have read, did that do what the debatable question is asking? In this question, the status quo. If they say, yeah, they did that, etc., etc., then I ask them to form an opinion on firstly the pieces that they have read and watched. That, okay, if this happened in this genre, in this movement, in this style, in this form of theater, do you think that that was effective? And I think to come up from that very objective, firstly, objective point of view, that, okay, when somebody else did it, what did it do to the society, to that person? Sometimes it failed, it massively sort of blew on somebody's faces and it didn't work out the way they planned. So maybe firstly getting a slightly distant opinion about that, how can, let's say in this question, the status quo question arises. And then slowly, I think when they do that in their own pieces, I feel that they're more equipped to answer that. Mostly the debatable questions for us really take shape at the end of the entire process. But we do end up then writing it in task one. However, the arrival at it, at a fully formed argument, only happens at the end of the process.
I think me and my students, we are very debatable in nature. So you can see that in all our tasks actually. So we use it for, especially while exploring ideas actually. In task two, we use it extensively in the process of selection and elimination. Uh, and towards the end, we also do hypothesis of, hypothesis of developments. So there also we use it extensively. So, but that's just to touch upon it. I use it extensively. That's why I'm not getting into that discussion at all.
Sure. I think we'll take one more last question. Rashmi, you have something to say?
Yeah, I have something to say, no question. So what I did in my classes, I divided the group into two half, like two different groups for debatable. So I gave the debatable question. We had a debate in the class, who is for it and against it, and they started, giving critics, and they spoke so much about both the teams that they got an idea how different perspective work, and even against and for the different ways of thinking. They got an idea, and that kind of helps them to answer the debatable questions and also come up with a debatable question. So that kind of was very positive. We started off with that because I wanted them to understand the future through art, the positive side, negative side, all sides. And so it was very successful, so I just thought I should share that.
Sure, sure. Thank you for sharing this.
Just to add on to what Rashmi said, that's so important, Rashmi, because like when you consider the MYP arts e-assessments, the learning process is given more weightage. And I hope everyone who is going I mean, I'm sure among this group also there are people who will be going for their first e-assessments. Uh, the learning process is given more weightage than the craft itself. Because I'm sure the examiners who are here also will agree that, the chief examiners, the first, bit of advice that they give is that, this is done by a 15-year-old, 14-year-old, 15-year-old child. So we are not expecting a professional level of work from that child. Ideally, what we are looking at is the child, are they able to are they able to understand how to learn art and how to produce art? Go to your subject objectives. That's what they're looking at. Are they able to, understand art? Are they able to find their own artistic process of creation? Are they able to produce something? Are they able to reflect back on their practices? Ideally, that's the bigger theme. They're not looking. I had shared to many people that I had in my last e-assessment, there was a child who just started dancing. Like that was her first. Like the portfolio dance was her first step. Before that, she had never danced. And I had a dancer who was a seasoned practitioner. And my new child, she got a 7, and the other one got a 6 compared to it, because I think over and about time she was so invested into developing her artistic vision and process, and that she was able to actually showcase in the e-portfolio assessment. So think always through the lens of the process. So at times we are all very much invested into our craft. So as an educator, we need to step back a little bit and let the child explore. So that's also something that we need to do consciously. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vaishak. Thank you, everyone. Vaishak, Neerav, Ila.